We are here with Cully Hamner, the artist extraordinaire for the series, where the miniseries Red and the recently released prequels to Red. Thanks a lot for sitting down with us or standing up with us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So let's talk about Red for a minute. It's kind of been a big year for Red. There was the release of the movie, and then the prequel one-shots that came out. What was it like revisiting these characters after an extensive period of time had passed?
Well, it was new for me. I mean, it was not something that I ever kind of intended to do. It was something they asked me to do, but once they asked me, suddenly I had an idea and I was off and running. And it was the sort of thing that Warren doesn't really kind of do the sequel thing, and he wasn't really all that interested. But he was like, hey, if you want to do it by yourself, feel free. And he seemed to like the story that I came up with. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to do something that just sort of fit is almost like another chapter of what we did, but like a prologue almost. Nothing that would contradict anything that's in the book, but something that would reveal maybe a couple of new layers or explain a couple of throwaway lines in the original book. That was mainly what I did. Was I picked up throwaway lines that that maybe didn't have a lot of meaning initially, but I wanted to give them more depth than what was there. But I didn't want to do anything that would harm what Warren and I did originally.
So you didn't really necessarily talk with Warren about it, other than to just say, "Hey, I've got this idea," and
yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I sent him the synopsis that I originally wrote, and his thought was, "Hey, it seems great. Go with it."
Well, and this puts you sort of on the other side of the script, because you're primarily known as an artist, right, and this is one of your few sort of forays into writing. How was that, having the script in your hand and the pen in your hand at the same time?
Well, it's scary. I mean, you have no excuses at that point. When you're an artist and you're working on comics, you can always blame the guy next to you if something doesn't come out the way you'd like it. I didn't like the script, or I didn't like, I don't think that guy knows what he's doing, or I didn't get good this, or I didn't get good that, But there's really, the middleman is gone, and if the script's not good, I can only blame me, if I don't like the writing, or if I don't like, any other part of the process. I mean, I was most of the process on this. I learned a lot about how not to approach writing for myself. I've written some short story type things that I've drawn also, and the process is a lot different than writing a 40-page story. So I learned a lot about what not to do and how to approach writing for myself later on. But it was a very interesting experience. But the only reason I did it really was because there was an opportunity to write, and I can't call myself a storyteller if I can't generate stories too. So it was a lot of fun in that regard, but it was really scary. I have a lot of respect for writers at this point, Yeah.
So another one that's just been published recently is your collection of The Question.
Right, yeah.
What was it like creating something, for people who don't know, The Question ran as 10-page backups in Detective Comics. What was it like creating 10-page chunks of story as opposed to something longer? I think that your Red prequel was something like 40 pages of story. So how did you approach it differently?
Well, it was kind of a lesson in economy, and the term that gets thrown around a lot nowadays is decompressed storytelling. For me, this was an exercise in compressed storytelling. It's like you couldn't really... There were times when I would love to have taken 3 pages to do something, but I had half a page to accomplish it, and that's... You can't really go outside the boundary of what you've got to work with, so you have to stay in that format. And, we basically had to do a lot of small bites. And this was a character that I wasn't really invested in when I got the job. Greg Rucka was much more invested in the character, and I had to get up to speed really quickly. So, once I kind of found what I could kind of sink my teeth into in what he was doing, it was great. I mean, we had it was different than a lot of stuff that I've been able to do in my career. So it was fun to be able to just say, okay, I can't go crazy on this. I basically just got to get across the bare minimum of information that'll get the story across. And it's not something that I think is the most comfortable thing to do a lot of times. It's almost like someone trying to shut you up. It's like you want to keep on talking, but you've only got like this narrow hallway that you can work in. It was cool. It was cool.
So what's next for you now?
Well, I mean, I've got some things that I'm working on that I can't really, I can't go into a lot of detail about. I'm working on a series right now with a writer that I haven't worked with in about 15 years. I did a series with about 15 years ago, and that's been really cool. I'm not really clear to talk about it yet. So, but it's going to be a lot of fun for anybody who's like a fan of some of the DC comics of like the early to mid 90s.
So this is again going to be more in the superhero genre or the DC comics genre.
It's a DC character. It's a little less superhero-y than a lot of characters are, but there's definitely a foot in the adventurer kind of genre. So it'll be a lot of fun. I'm not sure exactly when this thing is coming out. I'm only doing the first 3 issues of it, but it's going to be pretty cool, I think.
And then you want to take another stab at writing here sometime?
I'd like to. Maybe try to find a way to do it that's not so stressful. You know, I mean, the way I did it was I did it the most ass backwards way that you could possibly do it, and I sort of figured out that was the wrong way to do it. I think it turned out okay, but it could have turned out so much better. So there's always that thing where I'm like, all right, I did that. Now maybe I can do it better next time. So that I would like to try it again sometime, but probably not anytime this year.
All right, well, let's wrap this up the way we usually wrap up ours by asking you, what's your issue? What is that one comic or one thing that you've read that just, you read it and you went, wow, that was so amazing or so incredible or so out there that you got to tell people about it?
You know, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of stuff that I love from like the 80s and early 90s, kind of when I was a teenager and I was into comics. But there's one issue that sticks out in my mind, and it was an issue of a comic that Grant Morrison and Chaz Truog did called Animal Man back in the late 80s. And there was an issue with it was essentially an issue about the Roadrunner and the Coyote. But it was the saddest story that you could possibly do. And it's amazing to me that you can pull off a story that would make you cry with, like, you know, the Roadrunner and the Coyote. You know, and it really makes you feel for Wile E. Coyote, you know. I like comics that make you cry, and that doesn't happen very often. There was another comic that Paul Jenkins did back in the 90s with Spider-Man, and it was basically about a kid, you know, who's living like a really horrible life, you know, and he loves Spider-Man, and you know, he's a little African-American kid, and to him, he thinks, you know, Spider-Man looks like him, and it's just this really, you know, heartstring tugging little story, and you don't get enough of that in comics. Comics are too much about plot nowadays, I think, and not enough about character. Little stories like that are the ones that grab me.
All right, well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.